Hi there, I'm Air. I use he, him.
I'm Jerika. I use she, her.
I'm Leap. I use he, him.
And I'm Jay, your DM. I use he, him. And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom. Woohoo!
Woo! That good wisdom.
That good wisdom. The best kind of wisdom. That homespun country wisdom.
You know, back home, when my mama would brew a batch of wisdom, I'd smell it from the backyard out of the window, cooling on the sill, and I would run, hoping to get a sweet bite of that wisdom. I'm so sorry.
Excuse me, Lee Pacheski. I am actually from the American South.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
And for all of us, I say, we aren't listening to this podcast. We've never had any interest in the content you provide. We're safe. We're fine.
That's good, because I was going to analogize it to moonshine instead. So he went pie, though. Wholesome, American.
I tried.
Listen, I think it's important that we address the topic of, Southern stereotypes as portrayed by Canadians. It's so underrepresented in media.
I was getting a lot of Into the Badlands flashbacks right there, I'm not gonna lie.
Where are those cold takes?
Very cold.
So, hi, we're on a podcast right now. Hey, everybody.
We are.
Hey.
And it's not recorded live, and there are no special guests. It's just a regular old Insight Check.
But the next Insight Check, episode 50, promises to have a very special guest.
Twist. Turns. Traps you never expected.
New flavors.
And other delightful things.
We were all dead the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely got a flair for the dramatic here at Insight Check, which is why we thought maybe today we'd address characters who bring drama right to the table. Mm-hmm. We're talking all about those bards today. Mm-hmm. We're going hard on the bard this podcast.
Once you go bard, you never
keep going.
Eat lard.
Eat lard.
Eat lard. It's a bad choice.
That's it.
Yep.
No, it's...
I want to rock and roll all night.
All night.
And party every day.
Yeah.
Well, this show's canceled.
All right, everyone, go home. This has been fun.
I'm so sorry we never got to release the 50th episode. It was actually, I've heard, quite good. But the 49th episode was so bad.
Insight Check lost episodes.
I believe once very long ago we did have an episode titled 3 Men and a Murder Queen. And it has come back around to that configuration.
This is true.
In the grand cycle of history, it has once again become 3 Men and the Murder Queen.
That which was the past again revisits us.
So yeah, we're looking at a very lovely segment on this show we like to call Roll Call later. But first, we have to warm up. You can't just jump straight into a roll call.
You gotta stretch.
You gotta stretch by crawling in some dungeons. And that's why we're gonna do dungeon crawl.
Well, if I might be so bold, I would love to start.
No.
Okay, never mind. I withdraw my request.
Yes, you may start.
So I have a quick dungeon crawl, which is 2 awesome resources I found recently while I was actually searching for questions on bards. The first one is on our good friend, the RPG section of stackexchange.com, which is there an easy way to validate the spell selections of prepared casters? Which is to say, like, if you actually go from level 1 to 2 to 3 and so forth, the number of any given level of spell you have will vary, because at certain levels you get certain levels of spells and you can replace older ones with newer ones. But if you were to jump into, say, like a level 9 one shot where everybody's being boosted up, you can have X number of spells, but you can't just pick willy-nilly. You couldn't pick 10 5th level spells. Not that there would be 10 5th level spells to pick, because that would be against the rules. So I found a handy chart, which we'll make sure to link in the doobly-doo on our Twitter, which breaks down exactly how the maximum number of a given level of spell any prepared caster should have at a given level in their class. And I thought that was very useful because I know I've done one shots where I was like a wizard. It's like, okay, well, I start with 6 first level spells, and at second level, I would get another 2 first level spells. And then at second level, I could pick 2 second level spells. So like I kept having to do all that mental math just to know what level of spell and how many of each I could have to get me up to the maximum I could have. So this just makes it a lot easier. You have no more than 2 of these, no more than 3 of these, etc., etc. The second one is a really awesome multi-classing guide on giantintheplayground.com on their forum called the Ultimate Optimizer's Multi-Classing Guide. And essentially, it breaks down every class, their breakpoints for when you're going to get certain things in that class, certain key class features. And then for every class, they cross-reference it against every other class to tell you the viability of the build, how well it's going to kind of work, if you're going to hamstring yourself by picking, two or more classes that are way too
is this the one that highlights them in like sky blue, gold, red?
One of them, yeah. I know that's a color coding is common across like Giant in the Playground and a lot of other sites. But yeah, it does do that. And it was neat to see like some of my ideas. I'm like, oh, let's see what greater minds have thought about this multi-class. Oh, I was going to end up dead if I tried that. Good to know. So, yeah, I will make sure to link these both on the Tweetsour, but they were very cool resources.
That's really cool. I didn't know about these things, and that would be super useful because so many, like you said, so many one-shots just start at a certain level. And, I've been playing D&D for a long time, but I'm still relatively new to 5e, and especially if I was trying out a class that I haven't played before, that I'm not familiar with, that would be like a really useful thing to just kind of jump in and know, okay, I can do this many things with those many spells. Or like if I want to try multi-classing, this is something that would work and that's not something that would work.
Absolutely. It's definitely good to kind of see where that road's going to lead you before driving too far down it. All right. Who else wants to crawl deep into the innards of this dungeon?
I would like to talk about a personal dungeon crawl that involves everyone in this space right now, but specifically Jay. Will have happened in the past, as is always the case with our good podcast, but a lot of us started getting together and started talking about how much we just wanted to play a Dungeons and Dragons game where all of the races were tiny, adorable creatures. And Jay, being amazing, just started homebrewing them and was kind enough to let me help out with a lot of the lore of these things. And it's my first time really homebrewing anything. And I gotta say, it is really, really cool to see the kind of work that Jay's put into this, but also just to kind of mess around with Dungeons and Dragons as a genre. And I know people do this all the time on D&D Beyond and all sorts of other places, but I don't know, it's cool. And I'm very, very excited to run and maybe play in a game that is filled with mice and snails and frogs and...
Well, first of all, Mr. Chesky, if I may call you that.
Dr. Chesky
turns the chair around. That was my dad was Mr. Chesky. You can call me Leap.
All right, Chesky. No, mister. So,
you
first of all, let's clear some lies here. You have done every bit as much work as I have on this. It is large part due to your lore mongering that we are able to progress on this at a reasonable pace. So there's absolutely no reality where this project sees itself through to completion without you doing 5 pages of lore in a single night. It was quite impressive and very motivating.
It's
as
cool,
a collaborator. Though. It is. What I found really interesting is I haven't really made this something that I've talked about much, but one of my personal goals right now is kind of to try my hand at more official style homebrew content, more stuff that is at the level that it could be released to the general population.
Totally.
Not necessarily because I want to release stuff, but I just want to know the process and how it feels and how it works and what it's like to work on a project like that, and what are the fiddly little bits that you would never think of. For example, in the formatting of a Wizards of the Coast style paragraph, the first paragraph is never indented, and then every other one is. That's something I've never noticed, but I now know to be true.
I saw you doing that on, like, when you said that, okay, I'm designing it like the Unearthed Arcana. I all of a sudden noticed that you were being very intentional with how the layout was working. Yeah.
Exactly. I was trying to get very specific with mimicking the style of the Unearthed Arcana. So they have a specific phrase they use when they list the traits. So I made sure to use that phrasing in every single one. And a lot of it was going back and editing what had already been written to conform to the new style guide. So, for example, in listing abilities, they will switch between saying Beetleborn do this to saying your character can do this. Pretty regularly, it's always the descriptors of the physical features are listed. The race can do this. But when it's an ability that you use or get, it's always you can do this.
Interesting.
Which I guess is meant to put you into the mindset of like how you would play this character. It's saying you get to do this. This is your power. Mm-hmm. Whereas when it's just describing the traits, it's like, okay, these things look like this. So it's kind of that weird delineation within a heading, because it's not like those are separated into two different categories in the sheet. It's like size, language. Well, actually, language is always at the bottom, I've also noticed. But size, vision, those things are always Beetleborn can see this length. But whenever it goes down to the actual powers and abilities, it's always formatted, you can do this. You have this power. You are able to cast this spell. Which completely, I had to rewrite all of the stuff I had written to conform to that. Additionally, apparently you don't capitalize every time a race name is used, which was a big problem in the first draft.
Totally.
I put Beetleborn is one of the races, and I put literally every Beetleborn with capital B. Mm-hmm. And so I had to go back through and fix all that. Also, the only time a bold is used in an Unearthed Arcana is when it is describing the abilities of a race. So you put a bold over the text and you put a period after it, and then immediately the description begins. There's no space break there. So I had to go back and fix all that, put the period in on each heading and then not put in a space break. And then every section heading is just a bigger font. It's not bolded or underlined or anything like that. That might help make it more... That's stuff I use to make documents more readable. But it reads really well without any bolding. Just to increase the font size breaks up the document really well and draws your eyes pretty well as well. So I guess they know what they're doing over at Wizards of the Coast. But it's just been really interesting to get like a deep dive and really take a look at how they style documents and how they write things out. And to really try to capture that vibe, even though I don't have their fonts.
Totally.
That's the one thing that really bothers me is I don't have the right font.
Yeah. I found it really interesting. Well, like you said, like collaborating, like it's cool because a lot of my homebrew is either done at the table kind of on the fly because there's a cool idea, or it's kind of done on your own, right? And you might like pass that idea around to someone that you trust to see if it's like too overpowered or if it like has the right flavor.
Right, but even then it's written like this thing does this and this and this.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
You don't sit there and go back to the book and like look up how the items are formatted there and really get technical in it. Because if you did that for every single magic item you made, you would go crazy.
Exactly. You would be nuts. And the part that I really liked about this was like because Wizards of the Coast, people must do this all the time. Like people are collaborating on lore and on stats. And in our working document, you had a breakdown of all of the different like ASIs that the different characters were getting, right? So then when we started adding another one, we realized that, like we need another character. We need another race that has charisma as a bonus because that's currently down, right? So it was just that kind of meta thinking of a whole system that we were trying to put together.
Right, because we want people to have reasonable number of options so they can be flexible in their builds.
Totally, yeah. So they're not all like, you don't have to always be this race if you want to be viable as a paladin or a warlock or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just neat. It's been really, really neat, and I'm really excited.
There was a great quote from Comic Book Girl 19, I think is her name. Because she said she's a very spiritualist, and so she was talking about the number 3 being magic. And she said, it's magic because when one person works by themselves, they can do what they can do. When another person works with you as well, though, then it's not just you and that person both able to do what you can do. That in the effort of working together, a third energy is also created. Something that neither of you could do on your own.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's sort of the magic of 3, or the magic of collaboration, is that you not only get somebody else's energy, like somebody else's work effort and their knowledge and their history, but when you bounce ideas off someone else, you get new ideas you wouldn't have arrived at, either one of you by yourselves.
Totally.
And I think that's interesting, and I think it's very true.
Mm-hmm. And now, yeah, I fully agree. Now I just want to see these games kind of play out, right? Like, I know that we're both planning on running them. I would love to have an opportunity to like run them for each other at one weird venture at some point or another, right? Just for the fun of it. But yeah, I just want to see how this plays at this point in time. So it's cool. This must be how like people at Wizard feel every day, which is pretty neat. And I'm a little jealous.
I feel like, I don't know, I almost feel like I'm too close to the mechanics of it to actually play it now.
Oh, I see. Yeah, totally.
I feel like I've seen the guts too much.
Yeah.
And I would just be thinking about those while I'm playing it. I feel like it would be very difficult for me to play in this setting without, being the DM, because I feel like I have a very DM role over all these creations. Like I helped come up with the lore, I helped come up with the stats, like I helped create all these things, and so I have like a pretty intimate knowledge of how they all connect together. Mm-hmm. And I would feel weird being told how things work by someone else. So I'm not sure how that's very strange. It's a weird feeling, like it's similar to how I have a setting, Shambhala. If somebody wanted to run a game in Shambhala, I've already told people they can do that. They've done it before. But I could never play a game in Shambhala because I would be telling the DM how things work. I would be like, no, actually, in this town, they're like this, and this is how these people get. Like, nobody wants that guy at their table.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. I totally get that.
You role-played in your homebrew world? I was thinking about mechanics the whole time.
Okay. Anyway.
This is why I don't say much.
No, that's my... You should say as much as you want here.
No, Jay and I hijacked the whole conversation for a second, so thank you.
That's going to be my dungeon crawl as well, so...
I have a semi-related dungeon crawl. Ooh. And then a fun one for air.
Ooh.
Just for air. So Jay and Sparrow are back. Jason and the Sparrow are back on C Team. I am so really excited. We always get Jerry Hulkins doing the flappy wing dance. If you listen to the podcast only on C Team, just please watch whenever Jay talks. Just go, find a minute to watch him.
No, not me, Jay.
No, Jason. Jason the Stellar's J. That's Jayson. Yeah, so in a demeaning way, Jason calls his always companion, his bosom buddy who's never not with him. I don't know what that's about, but and I'm gendering these birds because I have feelings, but that's okay.
No, yeah, for sure.
So Jason has a companion named Mouse, I guess. It's not clear what the sparrow's name is supposed to be, but Jason calls the sparrow Mouse in a demeaning way. He says, Mouse, shut up and eat some cheese. And I was like, well, what if the sparrow was a mouse in reality. And so I'm going to play a mouse that can turn into a sparrow in a small folk game. That's the plan. So I'm going to be that sparrow / mouse.
Be that sparrow.
Yes.
I'm so excited about that. When you put, like, I always thought of that mouse thing as like an insult by Jason.
Me too.
And then all of a sudden it was like, no, Jason is just
reality.
telling these people who have no understanding, like telling Walnut very important information that she just doesn't realize, right?
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it so much.
You flipped the script, so to speak.
Yeah, so we'll see how quickly that headcanon gets blown out of the water, but that's okay. It'll be fun while it lasts. My second mini dungeon crawl is that I found my backstory for my first D&D character ever. My 3.5 character.
Cool.
I wrote it in Google Docs like 10 years ago or something.
Good
and
Lord.
I just wanted to read the first sentence. And this is specifically for air. The first thing you notice about Sierra is her long legs. So my Dungeon World character was a druid halfling. And her defining feature was her extremely long leggies. And I just thought it was very interesting that specific through line is now a motif in my life.
It is the gams that bind us.
It's the gams that bind us, yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I would love, it would be like a really interesting kind of game, meta game in a weird way, if like you had a bunch of friends who were able to find or recreate their original Dungeons and Dragons character and tried to play them almost both earnestly and as tongue-in-cheek as possible, right? Because depending on when you played Dungeons and Dragons, like I was a teenager, and so I'm sure there was really weird, like I'm sure I'd be super embarrassed with all of those kinds of things, So it would be interesting to see what the party dynamic and who your friends turned into, right? Like,
Let me read you a sentence, shall I?
oh please, this is my new favorite game.
Here's my Mary Sue. All right. Smart to an extreme. His mind is literally always snapping exact photos of the world around him. His memory and skills of interpretation, investigation, and interrogation are beyond average. And he lacks the ability to give up. This, coupled with his innate love, near zealous obsession with justice, meant he could only be one thing: a detective.
He lacks the ability to give up.
Oh man.
I think I've met those people.
Yeah, he lacks the ability. His love, near zealous obsession with justice. Oh my god. You could tell what kind of TV shows I was into.
I want that movie trailer, though. I want to watch it, you know?
Okay, anyway.
So.
People could Google that and then find. Oh no.
Oh, yes.
Hey, don't.
I mean, you can edit this out if you really want to, but yes.
Oh my god, no. Anyway, so.
We were going to talk about bards.
If I may, just because Jerika has inspired me, I am going through the email chain of the first D&D campaign I was ever in. I was DMing, and there's like me.
This is the greatest segment we've ever come up with on the fly.
Oh man, I love this segment.
We'll call it
History check.
Stories.
Oh, okay.
Oh, history check is even better.
That is also
all right.
good. History
Welcome
check,
to history check.
origin stories.
So I'm talking to my buddy Matt. I'm like, hey Matt, yep, all characters start with a +2 proficiency bonus, which goes up every few levels. It's added to attack rolls if you're proficient with the weapon, etc. My friend Pete responds with, okay, my guy's name is Zoroth the Robust. Zoroth is a magic user. His powers are sexy in nature. Also fire.
Also fire. Yes. I love it. Yeah.
So, and then I'm going on to explain how stats are generated. And we're explaining to my friend Ken that he should absolutely play a centaur if he wants to be a bard or some sort of high charisma character.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we worked out the
Centaurs.
math, and currently he's hung like 1/4 of a horse.
I am
I
crying.
think he's half centaur, half. So yeah, this was.
crying.
Thank you, Jerika, for that little.
You're welcome. One of the reasons why I looked her up, my character, is that she was a bard. So there you go.
Aaron, can't help to notice a certain sexy through line in your characters.
Listen.
And also fire.
And also fire.
Yeah, all right. Sometimes on this show, we do a roll call.
Bum, ba, ba, ba. Burm. Yeah, so we have decided to embrace, because how could you not, everyone's favorite class, the class that historically has been most beloved in D&D by one and all, the Bard. So we've got some juicy cues to sink our teeth into here.
Let's hang on. First of all, real fast, I want to go a little bit into like the origin of bards.
Yes, please.
I have a question that was actually about that. It's actually from Quora, and it's why do bards get so much hate? And the answer the guy gave was like an entire history from edition to edition about bards.
Why do bards fall in love? Why do bards sing so gay?
You have a great voice.
Thank you.
Jerika, why have you been hiding this?
Yeah, seriously.
You never hit it.
Well,
I just picked the wrong song to,
We all
to
knew.
showcase.
We all knew she had a beautiful voice.
but Jay, give us that.
It's done been node.
Yeah. Jay, give us that rich history.
So yeah, the bard first appears in the Dungeons and Dragons original, like the actual very first version of Dungeons and Dragons, very late on as a supplement. But it really doesn't become a big deal until Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. Now, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is when Dungeons and Dragons actually became a complete package of a game, where all the rules are self-contained within the, player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and everything else. Before that, Dungeons and Dragons had been a mod to a game called Chainmail. So Chainmail was about wargaming, and Dungeons and Dragons was a way to make that about one soldier instead of the whole army. And then it advanced to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and we got bards. So bards in first edition were kind of weird because you had to basically prestige into the bard
Twice.
from other classes.
Yeah, it was fighter, then you had to reset and play thief, then you had to reset and could be a bard.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So prestige classes are no longer a thing, but until third edition, they were a thing in Dungeons & Dragons. And effectively, it was like you got to level 5 in a class, and then that unlocked a different class that you could then jump into as a multi-class. But it wasn't like multi-classing in where it was totally different. It just sort of continued on down a different, more specifically flavored route. Like Assassin was a prestige class for the thief. So if one of the rules for becoming an assassin is you had to kill a person in order to get the prestige class assassin available to you. And so, yeah, there were prestige classes in earlier editions, and Bard was one of them. The problem with Bard as a prestige class is it basically grafted on some magic to a fighter, and what you ended up with was an inferior fighter and an inferior caster that couldn't do either thing well at all. And it had very, very high stat requirements. So you had to be insanely high stats, and then you didn't really get a whole lot out of it. And second edition didn't do much to fix this. They tried a few new things. They changed things around. It wasn't a prestige class anymore. It was part of the rogue group. So a bard was a type of rogue that you could be. And then third edition, they tried it again, and again, it was sort of a mess. And the problem with Bard is that they always made them partial casters. So they treated them sort of like arcane trickster rogues, are treated now, where you get like very little magic, but because you're a rogue, you're still getting that high damage every round from the sneak attack anyway, so you don't need so much high level magic. But for the bard, you were just a fighter, but instead of getting many attacks, you got very weak magic. So kind of like the Eldritch Knight, but even still, the Eldritch Knight is actually a better implementation of this than the bard ever was. It wasn't really until 4th edition and 5th edition that they started giving bards more access to magic and more access to magical abilities. But 5th edition just blew it out of the water, made them a full caster. It was like, you know what, forget it. We're going to drop the fighter stuff, make them a full caster, and then specialize them into illusion magic and magic, and the way that 5th edition could do this was because they had specific spell lists for each class. So they could balance the bard in the spell list as opposed to in how many levels of wizard they gave you. And that really helped things quite a bit. But yeah, so bards were always kind of underwhelming in older editions, but at the same time, you always wanted a bard because bards could spread your group story, and they got a lot of followers, and they had high charisma, so they could always drum up money for the party. So it was like a popular but underwhelming class that finally really hit its stride in 5th edition.
And I mean, never having played a prior edition of D&D, I came into the bard and I was like, I don't understand why everyone feels like this class is a joke. It's amazing. Like, the spell list is solid. They have some of the best control options in the game. If you're a lore bard, you also 8 of your 21 or 22 spells or whatever. So like, a decent portion, a third, is like any spell you want. And I was like, I really don't understand why. And I was like, reading back through the history, I was like, oh, this is all new. Like, they were never this awesome before. Yeah.
So I have never played a bard before. And so I have to say that this is the class that I'm probably the least familiar with. But I am looking at the colleges, which I'm sure all of our listeners know, but just in case they aren't, those are those different specialties that bards can use. Like, think of the circles that druids have, and the different fighting styles that fighters had. And they're all dope. And they're all dope for multiple different reasons. But I don't know a lot about them. So I feel like I'm going to have to spend some time and kind of look at them, because there's some really cool and different ways that you can play these guys by the looks of things.
Oh, absolutely. If you want a quick rundown, I'm sure Jay or I would be happy to kind of break them down in terms of what they can do. Jay, do you want to take it? Shall I take it?
I talked a lot.
Okay. So to talk about the bardic colleges, so the player's handbook gives you 2. There's the College of Lore, which I might kind of think of as the most quintessentially bardic one. It is the let's learn a little bit about everything. Bards are classically jack of all trade type characters. So they get some skills, they get a different way to use their bardic inspiration die, which is their class mechanic resource. They get a listing of spells that not a lot of other classes have this kind of flexibility. At certain levels, they can pick 2 spells from any class's spell list. But all bards get that in the later levels, but lore bards get it really early on, like 6th level.
Yeah, 10th level for everybody else, 6th level for lore bards.
That's crazy. That's such a big difference.
And they're really great skill monkeys. I always trying to think of the bard as like the magical counterpoint to the rogue. The rogue is like a martially inclined skill monkey, whereas the bard is a magically inclined skill monkey. So that's the College of Lore. You also get the College of Valor, which is like the Skald. It's more of that warrior fighter kind of history of the class. They specialize a little bit more in martial ability. They get proficiencies with shields and medium armor, things of that nature. They get multi or extra attack eventually.
It is the Gish version of this class.
Absolutely, yes. If you like to cast and slash, they are very good at that. In fact, they get a class feature that lets you do that every round. And then Xanathar's Guide to Everything brought us 3 more colleges. The College of Glamour is the Rockstar Bard, a lot of enchantment and charm-based magics. They get the ability to cast Command as a bonus action, like once every long rest, just for free, which is really powerful. College of Swords is a little bit more in the
kind of the slashy end of the caster slash.
It's like the
whereas Lorebard is more to the caster end, the swords is more to the slasher end.
Yeah, it's more of like a battle master fighter kind of variant. You're an impressive fencer of that sort, kind of Errol Flynn, but you're singing a song. And finally, College of Whispers is the sneaky assassin, kind of almost like a bit of a rogue mixed into your bard.
So if I want to min-max sexiness, which college
of glamour?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Bard. In fact, like, Jerika, if I could hit you with some of these features, enthralling performance, if you perform for at least 1 minute.
I do not consent to hitting, but yes, you may read it to me.
If I may gently gesture towards you with some of these class features, if that's okay. You can attempt to inspire wonder in your audience by singing, reciting a poem, or dancing. At the end of the performance, choose a number of humanoids within 60 feet of you who watched and listened to all of it, up to a number equal to your charisma modifier. Each target has to make a wisdom saving throw, or they become charmed, and the target idolizes you. It speaks glowingly of you to anyone who talks to it, and it hinders anyone who opposes you, although it avoids violence unless it was already inclined to fight on your behalf. So essentially, you can perform and get an entourage at level 3.
I mean, that's
awesome.
really good. I hear the ladies like a person with an entourage.
Sure. I mean,
We wouldn't know.
I have no idea. Yeah, you're talking to the three wrong gentlemen.
So they're really cool. Bards are very versatile, and because they're charisma class, they're great for your social encounters.
They make a good face.
Because they get most of the charm spells and most of the abilities that involve misdirection or misleading. They're a great roleplay heavy class where they can avoid a lot of encounters before they ever start with high intimidation rolls or persuasion checks or creating illusions cleverly. They are the ultimate combat diffuser.
I could give one anecdote. I was playing in a one-shot where I was a high-level glamour bard, and I had the 4th level charm monster spell, and the DM just threw this huge slathering, like, terrible monster just barreling at us. It was a single big monster fight, and I won initiative, was up first, so we hadn't engaged yet. I used charm monster, and it became my best friend. It started trying to lick me like a puppy. I tried petting it. It had acid skin. And I was just like, okay, good boy, off to the woods. And we completely negated the entire combat encounter for one spell. Bards are awesome.
Yeah, bards are great. And let's get to some of the questions, because I feel like a lot of what we're going to say is going to be in that.
I have one more question, just a single one.
Hit me. I consent.
Okay.
Can bards be lawful?
Absolutely.
I feel like
That's an
they're
interesting
more
role play.
chaotic than anything else.
So, can I kind of try this one out for because I feel like a lawful bard. Well, first I feel like I'm looking at College of Whispers right now, and there's like a really creepy kind of like propaganda spy kind of thing that I'm getting, but I feel like
you're able to whisper paranoia into people's minds.
Yeah, and like I feel like a bard who works for the government, whatever that government is, would then become the mouthpiece of the government, right? Like it might just be a lawful person and they might have the best intentions, or it might be a tool of some king or something like that, right? But it is an interesting question because, Jerika, I, like you, always thought of the bards kind of in the same, like more of a good-willed rogue, right? Just people who kind of lived outside of the general. Maybe it's just
like the Lin-Manuel Miranda sort of aesthetic where like he just, he works for the good of the people and like that kind of thing. But, it could be like a Virgil instead. Yes, I did just compare Lin-Manuel Miranda to Virgil. I think it is a very good comparison. But anyway, so like he wrote the Aeneid for one of the emperors. I think it was Augustus.
Yeah, it's propaganda.
And it was meant to be like a propaganda piece for the emperor to be like, yes, he is a god. Here's why. So I feel like that does make a lot of sense where you could have, obviously your PR man, working on your behalf. A
great, like a lawful, let's see. I don't know if he's... I would say in his actions as far as like using the existing structure in order to assert power, Madman, main character, he's kind of a lawful bard, right? He follows the rules of the law, but then he manipulates everything to manipulate people using what he's allowed to do on television to twist them.
We have found the first example of a true neutral character in fiction, Don Draper.
Don Draper.
Impressive.
I would argue. Well, I guess he does some pretty unlawful things over the course of that show, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does some pretty unlawful things. So
I would rather talk about Bobby Draper, but the point is conceded.
But the idea, like, that being a bard just means being a storyteller or making stories through music or making songs. It is a person who kind of communicates a legacy through art, and that doesn't necessarily have a lawful or unlawful connotation. So certainly there can be lawful people who communicate through art. And lawful also has evil, lawful evil is a thing that exists. So you can be using these stories to tell lies and be manipulative and things like that. Still be following the letter of the law, the rules as they exist, but still be manipulative asshole. Yeah, lawful is not good and chaotic is not evil. That's the fun of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, let's do some questions.
So our first question comes to us from Jay Striella on the RPG section of Stack Exchange. How to explain my bard getting a college education suddenly? I'm a newer player who decided to play as a bard, but I noticed that once you reach level 3, you get to choose a college. How do I explain to my party that my bard suddenly has a college education in the middle of the game? Are there any special preparations I should do in my character sheet, like adjusting my background for it? What do I do?
Well, first of all, a college of lore doesn't necessarily mean that you went to a college of lore. It is sort of a metaphor for... They like to, with every group of classes, they have sort of a thematic name. So barbarians have paths. Bards have colleges. It doesn't necessarily mean that you went to a college. But I think that the implication is not that you just went. It's that in your past, you trained under someone from that college. You trained under someone from that lineage of bardic history. And so it is you mastering things that you were taught years ago.
I think the key line here is in the Bard College class feature. It says that bards form loose associations, which they call colleges, to facilitate their gatherings and preserve their traditions. So it's not a college in the modern sense, it's like an education institution. It's more like a club, or it's more of a style of the bardic arts that you are like a devotee of. So when you get together with other bards, you're like, oh, well, I like swapping, stories and whatnot. Oh, well, I like throwing daggers as a form of entertainment.
It reminds me of like a salon of idea exchange, or almost like a gentleman's club where like maybe you do get some features from just being a member, but maybe you also have learned and have taught yourself or have trained with others certain skills.
Yeah, remember definition number 2 of college is an organized group of professional people with particular aims, duties, and privileges, such as the electoral college. So that's another version of a college, is just a group of people who have a particular set of skills. So a college of lore may just be your mentor, who is a lore bard themselves, and they are training you. And that is your college. You two are a college, a collection of individuals sharing knowledge.
Sharing knowledge equals college.
That is like, there's a college out there who has that as their motto, and it's an awful college.
Yeah.
Yeah, in colleges, knowledges.
That was amazing. How did you do that so quickly?
No, it's probably like in collegiate knowledgius or something.
If you want some of our fake currency, which I'm going to call insight points or inspiration points, you can tweet us what it would be, and We'll love
You
you.
want us to cut you an insight check?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
Get you a check of insight.
Jamie,
I like
where I was
that.
going.
Here
We
we go.
developed our currency, guys. We did it. It's
But it's CHECQUE. Do you use it in Canada too? The fancy check.
Oh yeah, the QUE.
Yes, we do. If there's a chance to insert a U into a word, we have taken it. Yes.
We don't have a Q or a U in there.
So I find question number 2 baffling. At any point taking the performance skill when I already got my proficiency bonus from my instruments? Yes.
Like performing without your instrument or doing any other performance whatsoever.
Or even performing with your instrument, like they may just call in a performance skill check instead of like an instrument check. And you may fight that as a player and be like, oh, well, actually, I'm not proficient in performance, but I am proficient in my lute, so can I roll with that? And that's fine. But if you're rolling like a performance to distract some guards or performance to get people past a blockade, then I'm probably not going to let you roll. I mean, like, unless you're busting your lute out and playing a musical tune every time you're distracting somebody, it's a little off.
I want to say that, like, if you have a very narrow sense of how your bard is going to perform, if you think they're just going to be like a busker constantly busting out the instrument and playing Stairway to Heaven, like that's such a narrow definition. I also think it really depends on how, like, what you're trying to accomplish. Like the kind of skill check is really driven by the narrative, right? So if it's just like, I want to melt some faces, I'm in like a bardic duel, you know, a lute off with some other bard, I would say, yeah, roll your proficiency with the instrument. But if it's, I want to get a crowd to fall in love with me, then I would say it's more of a performance check, because it's not always about being the best player. It's about stage presence and are you charming, and what's your, as you're tuning that lute, that what's your between song banter like that's the performance check. It's a little bit more general purpose.
So then I want to ask this question. Does a bard have to play a musical instrument when using it as a spellcasting focus? And this is by Jay Foster on Stack Exchange.
One of the campaigns that my friends used, my friend wanted to play a bard, but he refused to do an instrument, and we called him a motivational speaker. So
Nice.
he would give these, like, he would just basically give us pump up speeches, and those were his bardic inspiration. It was weird, but it also was like a really interesting turn on something that you assume that bards would have instruments. But no, this guy was literally like, and if you took it another way, it's just a storyteller, right? It is someone who uses the story itself as their way to weave their magic.
I played a character once who did all their bardic casting through poetry. I would make a quote or a poem anytime they were casting a spell that was relevant to the situation. And I was always like saving poems between sessions. And then I had a NPC in a game called Coach Jack, and Coach Jack, he was like just a football coach who would inspire you through football coach speeches. You're going to get back out there. You're going to give 110%. And you're going to take these guys down. You know why? Because Coach Jack believes in you. And it was just like that kind of thing every time.
I want him in my campaign.
He actually imparted his magic item onto the bard in the party eventually when they parted ways. And it was Coach Jack's sweaty towel.
I was hoping it was, now this would totally not be above table, but I hope it was Coach Jack's Coach Jock. Like, that's what I wanted.
No.
I'm sorry, I know I deserve that response, but I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry, you can edit all of this out.
I think Coach Jack's sweaty towel actually allowed bardic inspiration to recover hit points.
He sounds like a really hoopy fruit. I have now just invented I have now just invented my next bard PC when Leap said, because bards at the end of the day are storytellers, my bard is going to conjure up a table with dice and character sheets, and they're going to be a DM bard who's like, allow me to tell you a story.
It's Matt Mercer.
It's Matt Mercer the bard.
Stomper Mercer.
Matt Cat Stomper Mercer.
You should be like Mert Masser or something like that.
I love it.
Mert Kasser. Anyway.
I'll just switch the first two letters. Wait, shit.
Oh, shit. Mert Master. All right, so anyway, let's talk about Vancian magic.
Okay.
There's a great question here that gets into the topic of Vancian magic. How to RP gaining and swapping spells during level up as a bard. This gets to the topic of Vancian magic. That's coming from user Fanticalistic off of RD&D. So here's the thing. This game is built on a tradition of Vancian magic, which it no longer uses, but it used to use. Which was the idea that magic was very odd and strange, and that it could never quite be learned at all. And all you ever did was kind of temporarily grasp onto a spell, and then as soon as you used it, it would leave you. And so powerful wizards were capable of grasping onto a certain number of spells in a day, much more than weaker wizards, but no wizard ever truly knew Fireball. Like, they could temporarily hold on to Fireball by understanding how it's done, but once they cast it, that knowledge would magically dissipate from their mind. And so this is where spell slots come from originally, is that in the older systems, you would go to your first level spell slots and you would prepare 4 different spells for your 4 different first level spell slots.
You would memorize them. Yeah, I remember that, like, reading that and being like, you would spend your night in your book and memorize these. And now that makes sense.
So if you have, like, Cure Wounds twice and then Detect Magic twice, you can't use any other first level spells in those first level slots. You have prepared Cure Wounds twice, so you can use Cure Wounds twice. You have prepared Detect Magic twice, so you can use Detect Magic twice. That's it that you can do with those slots. You have committed those spells to those parts of your mind. And so, one of the leftover things that we have in D&D is learning, forgetting, and preparing spells, which is still related to that Vancian magic idea, that magic is just sort of a fickle, weird thing, and you can only hold so much of it at a time, and if you grasp onto these 9 spells, you might have to let go of this 10th spell, because that's just the weird, strange way that magic works. It's magical. Yeah, so it doesn't make sense, logically.
I have a question then, because, like, as a druid, I know that Jerika and I play them, and as a druid, we have a similar system that you can have so many spells and you can change them every day, and I always thought that it was, like, my role play perspective was like connecting to nature and kind of praying for the things that I thought would be useful in the upcoming day, and seeing if
right.
But so my question for people who have played bards, how would you role play this idea? Would you use like music that you copied, so you actually had to use like your music to write like to perform these, or like how would you justify this?
So in our game, I do play a bard, and one of the things I can do is in order to free me up to have one of the problem with prepared spellcasters where you have with known spellcasters where you have a set number of spells that you know, is you feel like, do I really want to take these utility spells? I'm not like a wizard where I can, just cast them out of a book or whatnot. It feels a little iffy to pick things that you're not absolutely 100% sure you're going to see use at the table. Jay gave me a magical instrument that lets me store 3 rituals in it. But one of the things that I have to do is I have to find a spell scroll for the ritual I want. I just did this recently. We were in Waterdeep, and I really wanted to get I cannot say this wizard's name. Rary, Rary, R-A-R-Y apostrophe S's.
I just go Rory.
Rory. Yeah. Gilmore Girls. Rory Gilmore's telepathic bond. I got that spell scroll, and I was tasked with having to figure out how to transpose it into music. So I was in the middle of a library and I bust out my violin and I start trying to learn how to play the song of this spell loudly. And it led to some good RP elements and it was a lot of fun. But that's how I've done it. In terms of like learning new spells or forgetting spells, the forgetting hasn't come up. But when it comes to learning new spells, it's always this was a tune I'd been working on for a while, or this is a composition that I was just trying to get, you know, the end of it perfect. I needed the perfect cadence at the end or something.
Cool.
I have an RP idea. We just leveled up and I've got a brand new spell that I want to learn, and I have an RP idea planned and I wanted to, I'm going to drop that next game. So
Papa's got a brand new spell.
Papa's got a brand new spell.
Yeah, and it really doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Like, you know, just the point of roleplay is not necessarily that it is something where you need to meticulously detail every step of the process. But as long as you imply that there's a larger narrative just off camera, then people are going to accept that and they're going to roll with it. We're not here to literally stop at the end of every session and be like, yes, I start practicing my level 8 spells that I'm going to learn 13 sessions from now.
Yeah,
Totally.
Speaking of rolling, should we do the last question?
My bard is cursed. I always roll low on his HP when I level. How low? He has 22 HP. At level 8. The default for that level is 43, assuming a constitution bonus of 0. This means he's got about half of what he's supposed to have. This is starting to become a problem.
What to do?
This is at QuestScribe on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, first of all, stop rolling. What the heck?
Take the fixed value.
Yeah, it's 5 per level.
Quest Scribe, I love your dedication.
No.
I want to talk right to you, my man Q Scribe.
You're a burden on your party.
Whoa, Jay, the shade.
I have friends who love to roll HP, and this seems like that kind of person, that they are either in a game where they've decided that rolling HP is what they do.
I have a player who does this too, and he never gets above what he should have, but he's always addicted to it. Because what if he gets that max roll, though?
The gambler.
Mm-hmm.
It is a gambling thing.
I would say you become very good friends with your cleric if you have 22 hit points at like level 8.
You really take all the spells with 120 range.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe combat just isn't a thing you do. Like...
One of your high-level spells that you can get from any class should probably be Circle of Death, 150 range, 60-foot radius, fireball. Sure, just stay way, way back and do that. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yeah, this is a bad situation, Quest Script. 22 HP is like, I mean, that's in the range where a crit at an eighth level monster could probably just one-shot kill you.
A fireball. The average damage of a fireball could one-shot kill you.
Well, yeah, an average damage of a fireball would knock you unconscious, and then a max damage fireball could straight up kill you. Yeah. You better hope they don't have any of those evocation specialist wizards who get to maximize their fireball once per day. Yeah. It's a nasty situation, Quest Scribe. You put yourself in.
I like the roleplay potential on it. Like, that's where my mind goes.
Frail bard.
A very frail bard, and it's like one of those things that like you're planning as a party. Is like, okay, well, you know, the paladin will go first, the barbarian will stand directly in front of the bard so nothing can hit him.
They won't even know the bard is there because the barbarian is so big.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You block them so they don't know, and then like round 2 he goes down and everyone's just like, god damn it, and then it just happens again, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh shit! He's the only one with healing words. Damn it! You've got to stay back, you madman.
My favorite thing about rolling is if you dump con hard. Like if you were to have a -7 con or worse, and you get a 1 on that die roll, you could lose HP on a level up.
You chose to roll. Yeah. That's your fault.
And dump con. What sort of adventure did you want to be?
What? First of all, con is never a dump stat.
No.
That needs to be a t-shirt.
Yes.
Hashtag con is never a dump stat. Like, your intelligence can be your dumb stat. Your wisdom can be your dumb stat. Con is never a dumb stat.
I mean, make your own choices, but it's a bad choice.
Free will is the freedom to make bad choices. Yes.
You can make your own choices. That doesn't make them good choices. But hey, fun's fun. It doesn't, sometimes being weak and dying quickly can be funny and fun.
Yeah, it's like, depending on the game, that could be just like an ongoing joke that you have, right? Mm-hmm. So, Q Scribby, I hope you get better. I hope it turns around. I hope
you get that 8 on your next roll. Your next 3 rolls, that would really help even the tables for you a little bit. Yeah, geez. Maybe take some points in con. Look for a belt of dwarven kind. Get that +2 con bump.
What's that feat? Yeah.
Take the tough feat, 2 hit points per level. That's an extra 16 hit points for you. Anyway, good luck.
Yeah, you're basically spending a bunch of your money and a bunch of your time trying to build up what was some roles that you could have not necessarily had to deal with.
But it's fun, right? Like a 22 HP bard is a great story. And it certainly made us laugh.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Your insight check is in the mail.
Bring it back around.
Oh my God, that's so good.
I love it.
Damn it. I didn't think of it and I'm so mad.
Well, that's it for another episode of Insight Check. Thank you so much to both Vinswept for providing our intro and outro music, Never Stand Alone, and of course the incomparable Amy T. Falcone for our chibi facing and online social media branding. Without you, we would be faceless. We would be faceless monsters.
It's true.
Yeah, we're just
not
monsters
just regular
now.
monsters.
just not the monsters we currently are. Now we're monsters with smiles.
Oh God, this has gotten scarier every minute.
I know, I'm sorry. I take it to a dark place. I'm bringing it back around. If you'd be so kind as to give us a review on iTunes, 5 stars, 6 stars, 5 stars, whatever you think is best, it would be very much appreciated.
6 stars, definitely.
That's that umami star.
Yeah, you can barely taste it.
We're also on Google Play now.
We are on Google Play. We are on YouTube. We are on all of your favorite
Stitcher.
online, audio.
We have at least 1 episode on SoundCloud.
Yeah, there you go.
And we may never update that page again. Find out today.
Give us 5 stars there too. Maybe we'll give you another episode.
6
Who knows?
stars. 6.
6 stars.
10 stars.
Let's just keep saying numbers and then the word stars. I'm going to do the line and bring us home. Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
was
Insight
Check. I'm Rory Gilmore's telepathic bond.
amazing. With her mom, obviously.
Yeah, with her mom, obviously. I want coffee. Okay.
But I also want coffee. Sorry.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, they just talk really fast and it's like it's being funny.
Yeah. Listen, I thought it was very funny.
Let's get back to bards, gentlemen.
Thank you, sorry, Murder Queen.
Welcome to Gilmore Girls Check. You're on caller.
Wow, I was just going down to the market and I saw this guy. Oh my God, I saw that guy too. Oh wow, did you see the guy all the time?
Wait, was it the guy with the pants or was it the guy with the hat?
Yeah,
the guy with the hat. Which hat? The white hat, the green hat? Oh, the brown hat. Yeah.
Anyway.
I think it's a little
Not
bit.
their only form of humor. It's a great show.
I actually really like that show, Jerika. I'm being honest on this one.
Yes.
But we should get back to bards.